Okay, the future is added. Let's go to the node 2. Okay, the future is added in node 2 also. Alright, now we are ready to cluster the node 1 and node 2. Click administrative tools. You will see failover cluster management. We just added this feature. Click that. It says we are not logged in as a domain user account. Okay, so we need to log in as a domain user account. Alright, we will log out from this mission. Similarly, but is the domain user added as administrator on this box? Let's check that. The domain user, in this case CLUADM, that user should be admin on node 1 and node 2. Just will make sure. Okay, here we added that, so should be fine. Domain admins are already there as administrator. So log off as a local administrator from the node 2. Switch user, login as a domain administrator. Go to the node 2. Switch user, login as a domain administrator. Okay, now we need to click failover cluster management. Let's go to the node 2. Okay, back to node 1. We don't want server manager on the startup. Close that. Okay, so now we are going to cluster the two missions, node 1 and node 2. Here, before creating the cluster, let's verify the configuration. Click validate a configuration, which will verify the cluster configuration. Click next and add the nodes, node 1, node 2. Next, run all tests. It will list out any issues if there is anything. It is good to do the validation before creating the cluster. Of course, it's a must. If you don't do this operation and you directly go to the create a cluster option, it will still make sure the validation passes. So far so good. There is some issue. Okay, it looks like this is a warning. Okay, the validation failed for some reason. Let us see the report, what the errors are. Validate disk failover, software update levels. It couldn't validate the disk failover. Okay, everything seems to be fine in the Starwind software. Now let us go to the node 2. Okay, let us validate it again. Okay, the validation passed second time. First time it failed because one of the shared disk, it was not formatted. Maybe I might have forgot to format it. That was the reason why it failed first time, the F drive. When I reformatted that, it went through second time, the validations. So validation went through fine. Click finish. Now we are ready to create the cluster. Go ahead and click create a cluster. Click next. Select the nodes that we are going to cluster, node 1 and node 2. And the cluster name, this is Windows cluster name. You can say Windows cluster. And I have listed down the IPs that I'm going to use. Go to that nodes, and this is the Windows cluster IP address that I'm going to use, 113. So assign 113, maximize the window. This is the IP for the Windows cluster. Click next. Now it is creating the Windows cluster for us. It will use the Quorum Disk, and it will set the IP configuration and the cluster configuration, everything in the Quorum Disk. It will make sure that disks can be bring online on both the nodes. Okay, now we have successfully created the Windows cluster. As you can see here, this is the cluster we just created. Okay, and there are no services, and we will be needing MSDTC service for the SQL Server failover clustering. Before installing SQL Server, we need to install MSDTC service in the clustering. So these are the nodes. Both nodes are up and running, as you can see here. And currently node 1 has the 4 disks, and node 2 doesn't have any disk. In the storage you will see the 4 disks. Okay, and these are the networks. This is private IPs and these are public IPs. Okay, now let us see the Quorum Disk. Okay, it took F drive because it didn't give us an option to choose which disk for the Quorum Disk. If you remember, we have assigned drive letter Q for the Quorum Disk. This is the disk that we wanted to use for the Quorum, but it took F drive. So in order to change the Quorum Disk, right click on the cluster, more actions, configure cluster Quorum settings. Select that option. Here we can change the Quorum Disk. For example, currently we have, it took, let me show you, it took F drive for the quorum. We are going to change the F drive to Q drive. Click that and select the second option. Next. Okay, select the Q drive and click next. Next. That's pretty much it. Now it is going to use Q drive for the quorum. The quorum disk has been changed. Okay. For example, sometimes we wanted to use the file share, for the quorum disk, for the quorum storage. In that case, select quorum settings. So select the third option. If you select third option, you can use file share instead of a disk, so that you can use the disk for something else. So for example, now my file share, I'm going to create the file share on the cluster DC machine, which is a domain controller machine. Okay, there are no shareable folders. We can create one for the quorum. Call it as a quorum we can create a new folder, call it as a quorum. Use that. Give read-write permissions. Click OK. OK. Next. Next. We are done. Now if you see, refresh this node. If you see the quorum configuration, earlier it was using the disk, now it is using the shareable file. Okay, so now if you see that, you can use the 4 drives, all the 4 drives. Okay, so in Windows 2003 you must have to use the disk, one of the shareable disks for the quorum. Okay, that requirement is just eliminated in 2008. As you can see from here, let us go to cluster DC machine. Okay, I'm accessing the cluster DC machine from node 1. As you can see, this is the quorum drive, and here is what it is using. It created 2 files. Okay, now we are done with Windows clustering. Our next step is to create the SQL Server failover clustering. For that, we need to install SQL Server on each node. While installing, we have the option to select failover clustering. So when we select that, then it will install the SQL Server software on the failover machines. Okay. Let us access I have the SQL Server software, the Enterprise Trial Edition, on the cluster DC machine. It is there on E drive, I guess. So let us access the E drive. Could be F drive, I guess. No. Okay, let us see what drive we have on cluster DC machine. Okay, we cannot, because this is not a local drive. Okay, what we can do, this is a pen drive. I have copied the SQL Server software on this pen drive. What I will do, I will remove my pen drive from this machine Okay, I'll go to node 1. Now I will plug the pen drive, so it should appear on this machine so that we can install SQL Server software. As you can see, this VMware machine has identified some USB drive has been attached, so it is finding the drivers to use that. So open the Explorer. Okay, even we can click this. Now go to SQL Server software folder, and I have downloaded SQL Server 2008 Enterprise Trial Edition and the Service Pack 1. Let us install SQL Server. I'm going to extract the files onto C drive.